Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
All aboard and welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. We're about to start a very special journey today. And we do run a very tight ship on this podcast, but the idea is that we all learn together how we can all leverage technology to stem the tide and turn some of those challenges ahead into opportunities. And Mark McClain, CEO and co-founder of SailPoint Technologies, is going to join us on the show today. And they are an Austin-based cybersecurity company that is helping customers better govern identities within their organisation. Now, Mark also recently launched his first book, Joy and Success at Work, which delves into the history and his experience as a tech entrepreneur, navigating those complex market conditions and boards, IPOs and scaling, and trying to disrupt an industry while also ensuring a strong culture for his employees. And we're also going to talk about how to embrace key employees' exits and why long-term success starts with the hiring process. So today I'm going to take your ears on a journey across the Atlantic to the US, where I'm told we're going to enjoy relatively smooth sailing today. So we can speak with Mark McClain, CEO and co-founder of SailPoint Technologies. So a massive warm welcome to the show, Mark. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Well, thank you, Neil. My name's Mark McClain. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called SailPoint. We are in the enterprise identity management space. That sounds fancy. It's basically helping large organizations around the globe keep track of, as we like to say, who has access to what and who should have access to what and what are they doing with it. So in this world of all digital technology, digital transformation sweeping through all organizations, almost of all sizes, people are struggling sometimes to ensure that the right people have access to the right systems and information in their technology. And that's what our software helps people manage.
Excellent. And like you said there, SailPoint Technologies is an Austin-based cybersecurity company that's helping customers better govern identities within their organization. But can you tell me a little bit more about the company and what makes you stand out in this incredibly crowded marketplace?
Well, we've been at it about 15 years, Neil, and this was actually a continuation, I like to say, of another company that some of my same co-founders and I started in early 2000s. We ran about 5 years and got acquired, and then this company started in the mid 2000s, 2005, and been quite a journey along this way. But I think what we figured out was there was some deep understanding our team had of the challenges that mid to large, and particularly large customers, very large customers, have with this problem as the world kept changing in their technology structures. And so that was kind of the market needs. We had a very, what we call market-driven approach, listening to customers. How could we understand their pain points and respond well? But kind of on a parallel track, and I think this will be something we'll want to talk more about, is part of the way we wanted to stand out was by being the kind of company that these organizations really wanted to work with. There's a lot of frustration today in the technology vendor landscape of people, as I like to say, over-promising and under-delivering. And we wanted to reverse that. We wanted to be the kind of company that people could understand what we were trying to do. We could be clear and direct with them, and then they could count on us to follow through on that. And so that was a big part of what we wanted to do, was to stand out, not just with the capabilities of our technology, but with our culture and the way we work with companies and partners. And I think we've done a nice job balancing both of those things.
You really have. And I think it's also worth highlighting that you have 20 plus years experience in developing and leading innovative technology companies. And you did start SailPoint, I think, way back in 2005 and led the company through a successful IPO in 2017. But I'd love to take you back to where it all began. I mean, can you remember what inspired you to start SailPoint and the kind of problems that you initially set out to solve?
Yeah, Neil, it really was a little bit of a second start, if you will, because we had done this other company called WaveSet, as it turns out. We like nautical themes, water-based things. And so we started WaveSet in 2000, and we're kind of an early player in a part of the identity landscape that's today called lifecycle management. Think of how we add new users to systems, and over time we change what they can do, and then someday they leave the organization or depart. And so there's this life cycle of how we give people access to systems in large companies. And that was our focus at Wavestat. Well, when we got this one started, we saw some new emerging challenges around what's now called compliance and governance, right? How do you ensure that the right people in fact have access to what they need, and no more, no less? But we also, I think, learned some things in how we had built the company that we wanted to, that company went only 4 years before it got acquired. And so I think there were some things we thought, if we have another shot at it, it'd be interesting to think about some things slightly differently, but pretty similarly in how we build the culture. And the funny part of that story, Neil, you mentioned that it went all the way through to an IPO a few years ago. I can dead honestly tell you that was not the expectation, right? I think we fully expected we would build another company that was an interesting company and did well and maybe drew the attention of some large tech buyers. And ultimately, we probably figured we would get acquired again. And that almost happened, by the way, a couple of times along the journey. But in general, it was sort of this idea of let's go build a great organization for as long as it goes, and we'll see how the market plays out. What I honestly never expected is I would still be doing this 15 years later. Dead honestly never expected this. So it's been quite a fun but interesting journey.
And for all those startup founders listening at various stages of their own journey, I mean, what were the biggest lessons that you learned from yours, from founding the company in 2005 up to leading the company through that successful IPO in 2017? What would you say the biggest lessons that you learned that would be useful to startup founders listening?
Well, Neil, this is a theme for me, and I imagine we'll get back to it. We'll talk a little bit about this book I wrote not too long ago, I think. But I think what I've learned across both Wavestat and really SailPoint, which is a 3 times as long journey, is that the core focus on values, which frankly, when you're talking to early stage people, right, early stage founders, sometimes early stage venture capitalists or people, whatever sort of funding source that people use, they'll usually focus 90+% of their energy and time on what is it we're going to do? What's the problem we're going to solve? What's the product we're going to build? And they might give some lip service to what are our values? What's our, kind of way of doing business? How do we treat people? Things like that. I've actually come to believe that's the big deal stuff, right? That's the stuff that really matters, because I can tell you, that first company lived through the 9/11 challenges here in the U.S. The second company has lived through these 07, 08, global recession, and most recently the COVID challenges. And we do have various flavors of challenge along the way. Sometimes they're external, like the ones I just mentioned. Sometimes they're self-inflicted. You get down a path strategically and you realize it's not quite what you need to do, and you need to shift gears or shift strategies. You have to really rely on the health and camaraderie of the organization sometimes to get you through those things. And so I've really become a very strong believer that understanding who you are as a leader or a group of leaders that found the company and the values you care about in your organization, those things will get tested and relied upon heavily as you go through challenging times. And we've been through enough challenging times now that we've, as I like to say, battle tested our values quite heavily. And we're really pleased that they've kind of withstood the test of time and really become a key part of how we think about the organization.
I think what's even more impressive than your journey is that you've also been able to achieve this success, but also been able to, I think you were recently named the top 10 CEO on Glassdoor's employee-driven list. And that was the second time that you've been on that list since 2016. And I think second time you received 99% employee approval rating. So I've got to ask, what is the secret to your success there?
Oh, Neil, I always joke about that when I get that 99% stat. I'm like, I'm going to find that other 1% and talk to them and find out why they're not so happy. But no, I have a really shorthand. That sounds silly, doesn't it? I have a very brief way of describing how I think about our culture. And I often describe it as just treat people like adults. and people say, well, how'd you get that Glassdoor rating? And how come people, like you? I said, look, it's not that hard to understand. I think it's just hard to do consistently as a leader, right? Because what does it mean to treat people like adults? It means that you're as transparent as you possibly can be with people, right? For those that have raised families, right? When you have a little kid, you don't tell them everything. Either they can't handle it or it's not wise for them. But as your kids become teenagers, and now I have 3 adult kids and they are all married and have kids. So, I've kind of seen this full journey to that stage. And, when you treat people like adults, you give them as much information as you can. You expect a lot of them, but you give them what they need to succeed, ideally, right? I'm going to have high expectations for you, but I'm going to try to train you or coach you or enable you to succeed in that. And I always like to say, when you do that with professionals, right? I've only managed in kind of I'll use the old term white collar, which none of us wear white collars anymore. But, the idea that we're working in a kind of professional high-tech setting. And I've really found that it really boils down to this concept, Neil, of keeping people between 2 guardrails, right? Like you want to give them enough clarity of the goals and objectives of what the organization's trying to do, combined with enough freedom that they can bring their knowledge, skills, experience, creativity to solve whatever problems they're facing. When you keep people between those 2 guardrails, right, they have enough understanding of what you want them to do, but enough freedom to choose how to do that and do that in a team. For most people, that's what equates to job satisfaction or job enrichment or all these fancy terms we use now, right? People like coming to work when they're working with other competent, capable people who are not jerks and who are also driven to accomplish the mission and get to do so in a really fun setting and creative setting. And that's what people like to do at work, is my experience.
And you did mention a few moments ago your new book, Joy and Success at Work, which I believe delves into your history and experience as a tech entrepreneur. But can you tell me a little bit more about the book, who it's aimed at, and the inspiration behind it?
Yeah, I can, Neil. I'll tell you, it's fun to give folks the subtitle because it gives you a little insight to how I think. The subtitle is Building Organizations That Don't Suck, the life out of people. So there's a kind of an intentional double entendre there, right? Like, how do you build an organization that doesn't suck? And we all joke about that phrase, right? But just not something where people go, gosh, I hate going to work. They pay me well. I can get through it, but I don't enjoy it. But it's also the idea of not sucking the life out of people, right? That people feel energized, not drained at the end of a workday. I mean, we all work hard. Sometimes you're drained from a fatigue standpoint, but not emotionally drained if it's a healthy environment. And so my goal in the book was to help people see that, look, a lot of people do have that dichotomy in their head that these things are mutually exclusive. I can either enjoy what I'm doing and have a lot of fun at it, but I probably won't do well or make as much money. And if I want to go make a lot of money and be successful, I'm probably going to have to tolerate a very frustrating environment or a challenging work setting or whatever. And I happen to believe those things are not mutually exclusive. I think you can have joy and success at work. And you do that, again, by creating an environment where people are able to achieve kind of the mission of accomplishing their objectives, which is kind of what we all get up and go to work for a lot of days, but to do so in an environment that's fun, right? That creates enjoyment. It's not fun as in ha-ha fun, rollicking around with your friends necessarily, but it can be a lot of fun to work with really smart people and solve problems together. But also, I mean, literally, humor is a big part of how we approach this. We laugh a lot at work. One of my executives joined us from another company who shall remain unnamed. And she said, I figured out what's weird here. She goes, we laugh in meetings. I never laughed in meetings before, right? We sort of took the work really seriously. And here, we're really serious about getting the work done, but we think you can do that while having a lot of fun at the same time. And so I've heard enough folks tell me, gosh, that's kind of unique. How do you do that? And I'm like, well, I'll just start writing some of that stuff down. And I thought I could capture it in a way that helped either entrepreneurs or early stage company people, but also people that are inside a larger organization, but trying to kind of create a very fun but productive team. And I think these principles apply in both settings. You can really define a lot of principles that I think are unique, or not unique to the company size and scale, but to the desire to do great work and have fun while doing it.
And you managed to write that book whilst resisting all those nautical puns as well. I mean, all hands on deck, sailing close to the wind, how to get everyone on board, don't be left high and dry, man. You resisted the temptation well there.
Not entirely, Neil. If you scan through the book, you might find a few of those nautical references along the way, actually. As my co-founder, Kevin, who retired not too long ago, loves to say, the English language is rich with nautical references. So we've all heard a lot of those sayings over the years. Sometimes we don't even know they come from the world of sailing and the sea, right? But it is fun to use those things. It really is.
Love it. And you have achieved something that I've not seen before, especially I've interviewed 1,200 people on this podcast. I've not seen anyone disrupt an industry while ensuring a strong culture for their employees at the same time. So what were your biggest challenges in doing this, and how did you overcome them?
Well, that's a good one, Neil. That's a great question. Yeah, and sadly, I wish my story was a little less unique. I don't know that it's a totally unique story, but it's unusual, yeah. I guess, right? Like you say, there's organizations people see where they're really successful, but frankly, they sort of tolerate the culture, right? They aren't necessarily enjoying it, and I joke that sometimes with those people are effectively getting combat pay, to use a military term, right? Like they're having to pay me a lot to put up with it here, right? But we're making money and doing well. Or we all know people who have this great passion for some great cause, and they seem to really enjoy what they're doing in some ways. But then, frankly, a lot of those are not successful organizations, right? They're not necessarily generating a lot of energy in their industry. And I think it's possible to do both, again, when you stay focused on this idea of treating people like adults. And borrowing from another author I like, Neil, his name's Patrick Lencioni. He's written some great books on organizational strategy and culture. And he has a book that I've heavily referenced, happy to give it a plug here, called The Ideal Team Player, because he captures in that book how I think about this quite well. And he says, look, at the end of the day, you want people on your team who hit three criteria, right? They are humble, hungry, and smart, right? You want people that are humble in the sense of not falsely humble, right? We've all seen that, right? Where I like to say that's where, to use the basketball reference, Kobe Bryant, who recently passed sadly, or LeBron James, some of the greatest players ever lived, if they look you in the eye and go, oh, I'm not that great, I'm just an okay basketball player. You're like, no, you're one of the greatest of all time, right? That's a false humility. I think true humility is when people recognize they're capable and competent, but they just aren't focused on themselves. Sadly, that doesn't necessarily apply to the two guys I just mentioned. But there's a great quote I heard years ago about this from a famous Christian author named C.S. Lewis. He said, humility is not thinking less of yourself than you should. It's just thinking of yourself less. Such a fantastic quote, right? I like to have people who are really capable and competent, and they know that. They know they're good at what they do. They just are not prima donnas. They're not all about telling you how awesome they are all day, right? So that humility value really is the core to the kind of people I think that help build an organization like this. But the other two are really important as well. Hungry just speaks to ambition, right? But healthy ambition, right? We've all seen unhealthy hunger, like I'm going to crush anyone who gets in my way on the way to the top. But healthy hunger is this concept. I forget the woman's name who did the TED Talk. You might know it, Neil. But the growth mindset, that phrase, a growth mindset that she kind of coined. That idea that you're always looking to grow and get better, that doesn't necessarily mean you're trying to aspire to run the organization as a CEO necessarily. It just means you want to be the best accountant or salesperson or engineer that you can possibly be. And that idea of growing and getting better at all times, that kind of hunger is a healthy thing. And then smart is both, IQ historically, right? Are you fundamentally intelligent? That's kind of important in a lot of jobs. But there's also this emotional intelligence that we all understand a lot more now. And I always say in kindergarten speak, that plays nicely with others, right? like this person you can put into a team and everyone will be happy they're on the team, not sad that they're on the team, right? And so that combination of those factors, Neil, I think when you search hard for people like that, they're really good at what they do. They're proven either in their schooling or in their experience as a professional. And competent in their track record, but they have this attitude of, I just want to be part of a team that's winning. I want to have fun while we do it. I want to give everybody a chance to shine. You can find people like that. They are harder to find, right? It does take more time and energy to find those people, but I think that's sort of the magic that makes this all work.
Absolutely. And you are a tech technology entrepreneur. But another thing that I think makes you stand out from the crowd is your spirituality and the brand of faith-driven leadership. That seems to guide your decision-making throughout and has helped you build your organization based on these shared values above all else. But can you tell me a little bit more about that belief system and how it's helped you be so successful?
Sure. Yeah, I actually don't always get a chance to do that, Neil. It's kind of a pleasure to do that occasionally. I'm a strong Christian, Christ follower, and have been for my whole adult life. And I think what I've learned is you can do that in a bad way in a work setting, kind of, pounding people with that. And that generally gets exactly the response it deserves, which is people go, get out of my face. And instead, I think when you have an attitude that says, look, because I have that value system, and it's a value system that always, there's the famous golden rule, right? Doing to others as you would have them do unto you, which says, look, that's where I get to treat people like adults, treat people the way that you would like to be treated. And when you do that and kind of have those values at your core, I think it sends a different signal to people in the organization. And I won't belabor all of them. We have these 4 I words for values: innovation, integrity, impact. But the last is individuals, right? And the reason, and the little short phrase that goes along with that is we value every person in our organization. But that's such a cliche in so many companies, but then how you actually live that out, walk the talk, is what matters, right? Yeah. So what I think people have learned at SailPoint is I take that very seriously. I expect my leaders to take that very seriously. And therefore the management team all throughout the organization and the people on the team take that very seriously. So it means you respect people of all different faiths and diverse backgrounds and cultures. You treat them as you would want to be treated, which means you understand that at times there's stuff going on in their life that makes work hard, and you do your best to accommodate that, right? If somebody's got a sick kid, or they're going through a difficult marriage, or I like to say, or the crisis of having a teenager, which is by definition, having a teenager is a crisis. In many ways, it's just how do you help people manage some of what's going on in their life? Because it does spill over into their work, right? That the days of kind of a division between our personal and professional life, they're kind of gone. By the way, Zoom's exacerbated that, right? Or highlighted that, right? We all get on calls now where I like to say the naked 7-year-old goes running by in the background in the middle of a work call, right? It's kind of crazy, but kind of fun too. And it's helped all of us remind each other that, hey, we're all just people trying to do our best. And if you treat people with that value, that you care about them, there's a phrase that at our church we use, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, is a phrase you may have heard too there. And this idea that, if you show that you care about people, they will tend to do a lot to try to honor that and work hard and do their best, because you've proven to them that you care about them as a person, not just as a widget, as a cog in the machine that will deliver results, right? I just feel like if you start from that value system, that's why I think the values are so critical, then you can weather a lot of difficult circumstances because people know you care about them and you're going to do your best to honor that in all your business settings.
And looking forward then, what's next for you and indeed SailPoint, and how are you planning to keep on making waves?
Hey, nice nautical reference there. I think you did that on purpose, Neil. I'm not sure, but I bet you did. I'm just kidding. Look, I think what's interesting about going through an IPO, so many companies see that as a finish line or a goal line, especially entrepreneurs. They think if we're really successful someday, we'll go public. That's still kind of a thing in the marketplace, especially in technology. And I've always reminded people from the outset that as we got a little closer to that, never confuse a milestone with a finish line. It is a big milestone to go public, right? But it's not a finish line. And so we continue to look for ways to grow and expand the value we provide for customers. I like to say the core of kind of why we do what we do is service, right? We want to serve our shareholders by providing them a great ROI. We want to serve our customers by providing them a great solution. We want to serve our partners by providing them with a great winning business partnership. And also we want to serve our teammates, our employees, our colleagues by providing an environment that lets them flourish and do their best. And so kind of the what's next is this marketplace we're in is just continuing to evolve and change. And the whole concept of identity, Neil, has become so key in the world of technology, right? Like, who are you and And what does that mean from a privacy and security standpoint in a business setting? It's what do you have access to, and what are you allowed to do, and what should you do that both provides value to the organization but protects the organization at the same time? There's just so many interesting things happening in that arena. We're not running out of things to do to help our customers navigate that challenge. There's another nautical reference, navigate. So I think along the way, Neil, we really feel like we've got a great business franchise from which we're operating, but also a great opportunity to continue to extend into new challenging areas for our customers. And again, to do so based on this strong cultural value system of treating people well, treating those in our ecosystem well, and everyone benefits.
And if anyone listening would like to contact you and find out a little bit more information, send an email with the subject line, ahoy, mate, or just find out more information about
I just can't respond. I can't promise that I'll respond to an ahoy, mate email. You can send one. Let's give it a shot. Let's see what happens.
But what's the best way of finding you guys online?
Well, both there's sort of the company. Again, we serve kind of mid to large size organizations, and SailPoint, loves to talk to those that are wrestling with these identity management challenges. SailPoint is as you can imagine, Neil, it's SAIL, the nautical sail, .SALE. So it's www.sailpoint.com, obviously. And then my book can be found on Amazon, and I have a webpage that's, I hate this actually, Neil, it's markmcclain.me. I just wanted markmcclain.com, but it was already taken, sadly. But .me is a thing these days. It doesn't go with my humility value very well, but anyways. But yeah, it's markmcclain.me, and always happy to engage with folks, and excited that folks find the book helpful if they get a chance to peruse it. I'm not in the business to become a famous author. I just thought it would be helpful to share these thoughts with folks and see if that can help them on their journey of building or leading organizations.
Well, I absolutely love chatting with you today. I will stay in touch with you and hopefully speak with you again in the future. And normally I would want to wish you the best of luck for the future, but I think it's best that we come full circle and finish on a nautical reference and say, Mark, may you have fair winds and following seas, my friend.
Oh, I love that phrase. I actually have known that one as well, Neil. And yeah, I wish I were a better sailor myself. I like to say my buddy Kevin was the true sailor in our partnership of our founding team. I was crew. Do I just pull on this line? Is that my job here? Get out of the way. Don't get hit by the boom, all that good stuff. But no, thank you, Neil. It's a real pleasure talking to you too. I'm thankful you do this podcast. I love a lot of the things you put out there, and appreciate the chance to speak to your listeners.
Yes, I know what you're thinking. Man, Neil's scraping the barrel with these nautical references today. But as you know by now, I just cannot help myself sometimes. So I implore you all not to abandon ship just yet. And join me in thanking Mark for discussing his experience as a technology entrepreneur today and the importance of building your core team, and highlighting that the first 25 to 50 people you hire are critical to your future success, not only from a business perspective, but also from a culture perspective as well. And so much food for thought about building a company like a construction project, where you have to lay a strong foundation first and everything else will follow as you put it on top of those foundations. And as always, please share your takeaways, ask me a question, request to come on the show, or even just to say hello by emailing me, techblogwriter@outlook.com. You can get me on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. Just look for @NeilCHughes, and my website is techblogwriter.co.uk. So I thank you all for joining me today. Remember, the pessimist will complain about the wind, the optimist expects it to change, the realist just adjusts the sails. So that's it for a podcast episode littered with nautical references today. And finally, all that's left for me to say is a big thank you for listening. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.